In the late 1870s, Friedrich Nietzsche was a man falling apart, plagued by chronic migraines, impending blindness, and severe stomach ailments. He took solitary walks through the freezing mountains of Europe to endure the pain. Nietzsche appears here as a rigorous academic, a man methodically dismantling his entire belief system piece by piece. For years, he had worshipped romantic ideals and cultural idols, like the composer Richard Wagner. But in the quiet isolation of his physical suffering, he began to see those heroes for what they actually were: opportunistic, flawed, and entirely human. The result of this brutal self-examination was published in 1878 as Human, All Too Human. As Nietzsche himself later wrote, the book is the literal monument of a crisis. Authentic philosophical awakening starts with a violent, painful loss of faith in everything one once admired. Nietzsche called this psychological rupture the Great Emancipation. It arrives like an earthquake, a sudden, almost involuntary compulsion to tear away from whatever binds a person the tightest. For a young, cultured mind, those bindings are heavy: a deep sense of duty, a reverence for ancient traditions, and gratitude toward family and country. Suddenly, that reverence turns into suspicion. A dangerous curiosity flares up, accompanied by a volatile, rebellious hatred for everything previously labeled as a duty. To survive this disorienting sickness of the soul, Nietzsche invented a companion, an idealized persona he called the free spirit, someone brave enough to wander this new, isolated landscape without fear. He realized that to build a genuinely independent mind, this free spirit couldn't just gently question the past. They had to ruthlessly tear down every comfortable illusion they once loved. The free spirit's first task is to examine what philosophy calls first and last things, the supposed origins of the universe, logic, and morality. To do this, Nietzsche proposes a new science, a chemistry of ideas. This diagram takes a complex concept, like absolute truth, and separates it into base data points, revealing our highest ideals grow from human errors. Following this tree, early humans misunderstood dreams, directly leading to the invention of the soul and God. These metaphysical inventions are dazzling, intoxicating errors. But the free spirit must learn to value the exact opposite: the small, unpretentious, and often discouraging truths discovered through strict scientific observation. Looking at reality clearly means accepting a difficult pill. Our most sacred beliefs and beautiful arts don't come from a divine spark. They are built out of the accumulated mistakes of primitive human history. Once the metaphysical world is dismantled, the free spirit turns their gaze downward, placing human morality directly onto the psychological dissecting table. The sharpest scalpel here is the realization that a purely unselfish action does not exist. Every supposed act of sacrifice is driven by personal need, a desire for power, or the instinct for self-preservation. The concept of justice didn't descend from divine law. It originated as a practical exchange between two equally matched powers who realized that fighting would only destroy them both. Nietzsche observes that if every choice is simply the result of the strongest internal motive winning out, then human behavior is a chain of cause and effect. This chain makes the concept of free will a fable, meaning we are no more responsible for our actions than a block of granite is responsible for being granite. Historically, religious systems maintained control by setting moral standards so high they were impossible to satisfy. This forced followers into a state of constant failure, creating an artificial sense of guilt functioning as a potent psychological stimulant for a weary society. Stripping away that guilt doesn't render humanity evil. By understanding the raw mechanics of our choices, it reveals humans to be entirely natural, deeply flawed, and perfectly innocent machines. You might assume that after violently destroying every moral foundation and metaphysical comfort, the free spirit is left wandering through a depressed, empty wasteland. In reality, this destruction is followed by a period Nietzsche calls convalescence. It is a long, slow recovery, marked by a calm, objective mindset that finally begins to heal from the sickness of traditional belief. The heavy burden of sin and duty is gone. By recognizing the absolute innocence of nature, the convalescent experiences a bird-like freedom and a sudden, profound lightness. The loss of universal meaning isn't a tragedy to mourn. It is the exact radical cure the free spirit required to stop suffering over imaginary sins and actually start living. To maintain this health, the fully liberated thinker has to adopt a very specific way of life. They must carefully avoid getting caught in the permanent cobweb nets of society, dodging extreme passions, definitive commitments, and traditional institutions. Nietzsche captures this existence with one final, enduring metaphor: the wanderer. The wanderer accepts that there are no final destinations. They will inevitably endure dark, freezing nights of complete isolation, only to greet the morning sun with a glowing sense of clarity, open to observing whatever happens in the world. True freedom is the courageous, ongoing process of abandoning your deepest convictions to seek the truth.